In the last lecture, we learned what is an event and how to handle an event using inline event handler. Now, in this lecture, we are going to learn how to handle events using event handler property. Let's try to understand it with an example. So what we want is when this apply now button is clicked, we want to show an alert window in the browser with the message, thank you for applying. And let's try to do that using event handler properties. So basically on this apply now button, we want to handle a click event. So for that, instead of using inline event handler like we are doing here on these divs, what we are going to do is we are going to use event handler property. Now, in order to use event handler property, first of all, we need to access this button element on which we want to handle the click event from our JavaScript code. So if I scroll down, let's see where we have that button. So here we have that button, and this button has a class apply now button. So we are going to access this button element using its class name. So I'll copy this class name. Let's go to script.js. Let me scroll down. Here we are going to talk about event handler properties. Okay, so as I mentioned, in order to handle click event on this button, first of all, we need to access this button from JavaScript. For that, I'm going to use document.query selector because I want to select this button element using its class name. So the class name is apply now button. And since we are using the class name, we need to use a dot before this name. So this expression here, it is going to return us this button element. We can go ahead and we can store it in a variable, or we can directly use event handler property on this expression itself. But to keep things simple, I'm going to assign it to a variable and I'll call it apply button. So in this variable, we are storing the DOM object. This button element, it will be created as an object in the DOM. So we are storing that object inside this apply button variable. Now on that object, we will have different events. For example, on click, on focus, etc. So just like in case of inline event handling, we have these attributes like on click, on focus, etc. In the same way, when these elements will be created as a DOM object in the DOM, on that object also we will have properties like on click, on focus, etc. So in HTML, we have these attributes, but in the DOM, we will have those attributes as a property. So what I can do is on this button element, on this DOM object, I can access a property on click. Okay, and to this, I can assign any JavaScript expression which I want to execute. For example, here I can assign an anonymous function to this. Now, why I am assigning an anonymous function here? Because I want to execute this function only when this button is clicked. I don't want to reuse this function anywhere else. I only want to execute this function whenever this button is clicked and not anywhere else. That's why I'm using an anonymous function here, because as we have learned earlier, an anonymous function cannot be reused. It can be used only once. So what do we want to do when this button is clicked? We want to display an alert window. For that, we are going to use this alert function. And here we will simply say, thank you for applying. Okay. If I save the changes, and now whenever we will click on this apply now button, it is going to display this alert window. Every time we click on this apply now button, it is going to show this alert window, because every time when we will click on this button, this function will be executed. So here we are using event handler property. This on click, it is a property on the DOM object using which we are listening to an event. So the event here is the click event. The listener is this on click property. And whenever that click event happens, this function is the event handler function, because this function will be executed every time the click event will happen on this button. Okay, so this is how we can handle events using event handler properties. In case of inline event handler, we use this on click as an attribute name on the DOM element on which we want to listen to event. But in case of event handler property, we access this property on the DOM object, and to that property we assign any JavaScript expression which we want to execute. Here I'm assigning a function. Okay. Now let's see another example. So what I want is, when I hover over this apply now button, I want to change its style. So I want to set its background color to transparent, and I want to set some border color. So for that, on this apply button, I can listen to another event, and that is also possible. You can listen to multiple events on a DOM element. Currently we are listening for this on click event, but now I'm going to also listen for on mouse over. So the event name is mouse over and the property name will be on mouse over. So what do we want to do in this case? Again, I'm going to execute a function. In that function, I'm going to write some code to set the background color of this button to transparent, and I'm going to set its border. So for that, I can say apply button dot style dot background color to transparent. Okay, and let me again copy this code, and here I'm going to set the border. Let me check the color here. So if I scroll up, I want to set the border to this color. I'll copy it, I'll pass it here. I want the border to be 2 pixel and solid. All right, let's save the changes. And now when I hover over this apply now, you will see that the background color is now transparent and it has some border color. But when I move my mouse away from here, in that case, it is not changing back. That's because when we hover over this button, this on mouse over event happened and it changed its style. But when I'm moving my mouse away from that, it is not changing that style, because when I have moved my mouse away, the on mouse out event has happened. So in that case also, we want to change its background color back to this color. So here I'm also going to handle on mouse out event. So the event name is mouse out, but the property name will be on mouse out. Okay, so here I'm going to change the background color to this color. I'll copy this color and here I'll set it, and I'll set the border to none. Let's save the changes now. So initially it is orange. If I hover over it, now the background color has changed and some border has been set. If I move my mouse away, again, the background color has changed. So both on mouse enter and on mouse out event we are handling using event handler properties. So on this button, we are handling 3 events: the click event, mouse over event, and mouse out event. So this is another way of handling events in JavaScript using event handler properties. So every DOM object is going to have an event handler property. If you want to handle focus event, on that DOM object, you will have a property called onFocus. If you want to handle mouse over event, on that DOM object, you will have on mouse over property. So for each event, there will be a property on the DOM object which you can use for event handling. I hope this is clear. So this is all from this lecture. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.